Hannah Brooks heard the child before she saw her. It was not a loud cry. It was the small, broken sound of someone trying desperately not to be heard. Hannah stopped in the service hallway holding a silver tray. Beyond the double doors, Jonathan Reed's guests laughed beneath crystal chandeliers. Investors were drinking $1,200 wine. No one noticed the soft scraping sound coming from the pantry. Hannah set the tray down and opened the door. A little girl was crouched beside a laundry cart. She looked about 7. Her brown hair was tangled. Her knees were muddy. One shoe was missing a lace, and blood had dried along a scratch on her wrist. She held a faded blue blanket against her chest until her fingers whitened. The girl looked at Hannah's black housekeeping uniform. "Please," she whispered. "Don't tell him." "Tell who?" "The man in the gray suit." Footsteps sounded down the hall. Hannah glanced through the doorway. 2 security guards were approaching with Marcus Hale, Reedwell Technologies' chief financial officer. Marcus wore an immaculate gray suit. The child saw him and folded into herself. Hannah did not ask another question. "Come with me." She took the girl's hand and hurried through the service doors into the formal dining room. The speeches had begun, and every face was turned toward the front. Hannah guided the child behind her cart, moved along the wall, then lifted the heavy white cloth covering the main dining table. "Get under there." The child stared at her. "I won't let anyone pull you out," Hannah said. "But you have to trust me for 1 minute." The girl crawled beneath the table. Hannah slipped off her cardigan and pushed it after her. Then she straightened, picked up the tray, and began serving dessert. Marcus entered seconds later. "Everyone remain seated," he announced. Security believes someone entered the estate through the east service door. A few guests laughed nervously, assuming it was a minor inconvenience. Jonathan Reed did not laugh. At 52, Jonathan had the stillness of a man who never needed to raise his voice. He stood at the head of the table in a dark suit, one hand resting beside his untouched coffee. "What kind of someone?" he asked. "A child," Marcus said. "Possibly being used to create a scene." Hannah placed a plate in front of an investor. Her hand trembled once. Marcus noticed. He walked toward her. "Did you see anyone?" "No, sir." A faint sob came from beneath the table. Conversation stopped. One of the security guards reached for the tablecloth. Hannah stepped in front of him. "I dropped a serving spoon." Marcus's eyes hardened. "Move." Jonathan came around the table. "Hannah," he said. It startled her that he knew her name. She looked at him, then at the floor. Jonathan slowly lifted the cloth. The little girl was curled around the blue blanket, her wet face half hidden behind it. Jonathan's expression changed before anyone else understood why. He crouched slowly. His eyes fixed on the blanket's lower corner, where a small white lighthouse had been stitched with uneven blue thread. Beneath it were 2 faded initials. CR. Jonathan reached toward the fabric, then stopped before touching it. "Where did you get that?" The girl pressed the blanket closer. "Mama said you would know the lighthouse." Jonathan's face went pale. Hannah saw something break through the control he wore like armor. Not confusion. Recognition. Marcus stepped forward. "Jonathan, we need to remove her and call the police." "No." The single word silenced the room. Jonathan lowered himself until he was sitting on the polished floor. "My mother made that blanket," he said quietly. "She made it for my sister." The child looked at the framed photograph on the sideboard behind him. It showed a younger Jonathan beside a smiling woman with the same dark eyes as the girl. "That's Mama," she said. Jonathan turned toward the photograph, then back to the child. His voice barely worked. "What was your mother's name?" The girl crawled 1 inch closer to Hannah but kept watching him. "Caroline Reed," she said. "She told me you were my uncle." The dinner ended without dessert. Jonathan's guests left through the front doors while security searched the grounds. Marcus remained near the library, speaking in low tones to 2 attorneys. Hannah took the girl to the kitchen because it was the warmest room in the house and the least frightening. "What is your name?" Hannah asked. "Emma." Hannah placed a plate of roasted chicken before her. Emma stared at it but did not move. You're hungry. Emma shook her head. Ben had once found Luke hiding after breaking a neighbor's window. The boy had refused to eat because he thought accepting food meant accepting punishment afterward. Hannah made a turkey sandwich, cut it in half, and took the first bite herself. Emma watched closely. No tricks, Hannah said. Just dinner. Emma reached for it. Jonathan stood in the doorway. He looked more comfortable addressing a boardroom than entering his own kitchen. May I sit down? He asked. Emma looked at Hannah. Hannah nodded, and Jonathan pulled out the chair farthest from the girl. Where is Caroline? He asked. Emma stopped chewing. Hannah gave him a warning look. Jonathan tried again. Where is your mother? At the hospital. Which hospital? I don't know. Marcus entered before Hannah could speak. We need professionals handling this, he said. There are people who teach children exactly what to say when targeting wealthy families. Emma slid from her chair and hid behind Hannah. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Marcus looked at the blanket on the counter. Anyone could copy that stitching. No, Jonathan said. They could copy the lighthouse. They would not know my mother always made the left window crooked. Hannah glanced down. One tiny lighthouse window leaned sideways. Marcus recovered quickly. Sentimental details do not prove identity. They prove someone close to Caroline had this blanket. Marcus turned to Hannah. Did the child tell you what she wants? She asked not to be found. That is not an answer. It is the only one she owes us tonight. Marcus gave Hannah a thin smile. You are a housekeeper, Mrs. Brooks. Not a child advocate. Hannah met his eyes. Right now, I'm the person she trusts. Jonathan looked at Emma's small hand twisted into Hannah's apron. He seemed to realize the truth of it. He crouched beside a cabinet and opened a lower drawer. From the back, he removed a wooden music box shaped like a piano. This belonged to Caroline, he said. He wound the key and placed it on the floor. A melody filled the kitchen. Emma stepped out from behind Hannah. Mama hummed that when the lights went out. Jonathan sat back on his heels. Our father hated storms. Caroline used to sing that to him. For a moment, grief removed every difference between the powerful man and the frightened child. Emma returned to the table. Between bites, she explained that she and her mother had lived at a place run by Miss Eleanor. Caroline had grown sick. 3 nights earlier, an ambulance came. Before leaving, Caroline wrapped Emma in the blanket and gave her a red envelope. She said if Miss Eleanor couldn't keep me, I should find Jonathan Reed. Where is the envelope? Jonathan asked. Emma touched the inside of her sweater. Hannah noticed Marcus watching. Emma continued. A lady was taking me to another house, but her car crashed near the bus station. There were sirens. I got scared. I used the money Mama put in my shoe. You crossed 2 counties alone? Hannah asked. Emma nodded. Jonathan looked down, ashamed by the distance the child had traveled to reach a man she had never met. Marcus stepped closer. We should see the envelope. Emma backed away. Jonathan stood between them. No one takes anything from her. Marcus's face hardened. You are letting guilt make decisions. Perhaps guilt is overdue. Marcus left the kitchen without another word. Only after the door closed did Emma breathe normally again. Jonathan poured water into a small glass and placed it near her without touching her hand. Emma looked toward the hallway. Then she gripped Hannah's fingers and whispered, That is the man Mama said never to trust. Emma slept in a guest room with Hannah sitting beside the door. At 2 in the morning, Hannah went downstairs for water and found Marcus waiting in the dark kitchen. He did not pretend the meeting was accidental. You have worked here 4 years, he said. No complaints. No missing property. Jonathan barely noticed you, which is usually the safest position in a house like this. Hannah set down her glass. What do you want? The blanket. No. Marcus moved closer. Your home is owned by Reedwell Residential. Your rent is already late. Your son graduates next spring. One phone call could make both problems disappear. And another call could put us on the street. That depends on how difficult you choose to be. Hannah thought of Luke asleep in their small rental house. She thought of Emma folding herself beneath the table. Threatening my son is not persuasion. Marcus's expression did not change. It was advice. He left by the service hall. Hannah returned upstairs, but she did not wake Jonathan. Accusing a powerful man without proof would only give Marcus time to prepare. She sat beside Emma and studied the blanket. Most of the stitching was old and softened by years of washing. The lighthouse corner felt different. The white thread was tighter, and several blue stitches looked newer. Hannah had repaired enough uniforms to recognize a hidden seam. She borrowed a sewing kit from the laundry room and carefully lifted 3 stitches. A narrow strip of paper rested behind the lighthouse. Jonathan was in his study when Hannah entered at dawn. He read the message twice. Jonathan, if Emma reaches you, the truth is where Ben told me light survives the dark. A small brass key was folded inside. Hannah stared at her husband's name. Ben knew your sister. Jonathan opened an old employee database. Benjamin Brooks. Security Transportation Division. He told me he drove executives. He drove Caroline the night she left. Hannah felt the room tilt. During the final months of Ben's life, he had come home late, checked the windows twice, and refused to explain why. She had believed he was ashamed of debts or hiding another life. Jonathan looked at her. I remember him now. Everyone else refused to take Caroline after the accusation. Ben did. Emma appeared in the doorway holding the loosened blanket. Did Mama write to you? Jonathan knelt. Yes. Are you mad? No. I'm angry that she had to hide. Emma considered him, then allowed him to touch one edge of the blanket. Before leaving, Jonathan brought Emma a pair of socks. He set them beside her instead of trying to help. Emma changed them herself, then handed him the torn lace from her shoe as if granting trust. The brass key belonged to Harbor Light Storage outside New Haven. Eleanor Price arrived from the shelter and agreed to remain with Emma while Jonathan, Hannah, and a trusted attorney drove there. Locker 218 had been rented under Benjamin Brooks's name. Its lock was new. The manager checked his records. Someone cleared this unit at 8:15 this morning. Jonathan requested the security video. On the screen, Marcus's assistant rolled a metal document case toward a company vehicle. Hannah felt vindicated for only a second. Then her phone vibrated. An unknown number had sent a photograph of Luke leaving school. His backpack hung from one shoulder. He was laughing at something outside the frame. Below the photograph was a message. Give back the blanket, or your son becomes part of this story. Hannah's knees weakened. Jonathan took the phone, read the message, and immediately called his head of security. No one from your company goes near my son, Hannah said. They will protect him. Your security department employed Marcus's assistant. Jonathan stopped. For the first time, he seemed to understand that his money and authority could not automatically make Hannah feel safe. What do you need me to do? He asked. It was not an order. It was a question. Bring Luke to the estate yourself, Hannah said. No drivers. No guards I don't know. Jonathan nodded. The storage manager rewound the video. Marcus's assistant paused before leaving the locker and pulled something small from the metal case. A strip of faded red fabric. Hannah looked at the blanket in her hands. Its red border had been resewn in one place. Whatever Ben had hidden, Marcus believed part of it was still inside. Jonathan brought Luke to the estate himself. Luke climbed out of the passenger seat wearing his school hoodie and an expression that made it clear he trusted no one inside the mansion. You let some rich executive drag you into his family mess? He asked Hannah. A child came to me frightened. A child always comes to you frightened. A neighbor. A customer. Someone from church. You cannot keep risking everything we have. Hannah looked at her son's face and saw Ben's stubborn mouth. This time someone photographed you. Luke's anger disappeared. Jonathan offered to place guards outside the house. Hannah refused until he allowed her to choose them from people unaffiliated with Marcus. It was the first decision Jonathan surrendered without argument. Eleanor Price arrived just after noon. She was a silver-haired woman with a worn leather bag and the calm voice of someone accustomed to entering rooms after lives had fallen apart. Caroline died 3 weeks ago, she told them. Jonathan gripped the back of a chair. Emma was in the next room drawing with colored pencils, unaware that the adults were speaking about her mother. Eleanor explained that Caroline had lived under the name Carrie Carter. She had a serious heart condition but avoided hospitals whenever possible because she feared her identity would appear in a database Marcus could access. She waited too long, Eleanor said. By the time she accepted treatment, there was very little they could do. Why didn't she call me? Jonathan asked. She did. More than once. His face tightened. Eleanor removed a small recorder from her bag. Caroline's voice was weak but unmistakably warm. Jonathan, if you are hearing this, Emma found the lighthouse. Jonathan closed his eyes. Caroline explained the transfers she had discovered while working in Reedwell's finance department. Marcus had moved company money through shell vendors to cover debts created by his father. When Caroline confronted him, he altered records and made her appear responsible. I thought you would believe me, the recording said. But you looked at the documents before you looked at your sister. Jonathan sat down as if his legs had failed him. Caroline said Marcus threatened to have her arrested and take her baby. Ben Brooks, a security driver, overheard part of the confrontation. He helped her leave the building, copied several ledger pages, and drove her to a shelter outside the city. Ben believed me when believing me could cost him everything. Hannah covered her mouth. The recorder continued. He wanted to bring the records to you. He said a brother deserved one chance to make things right. 2 days later, Ben died on the highway. Luke stood in the doorway. No one had heard him enter. For 7 years, the official story had been that Ben caused the crash after falling asleep behind the wheel. Hannah had blamed his exhaustion, his secrecy, and sometimes Ben himself. Now she saw his last months differently. The locked drawer. The late calls. The way he hugged Luke longer before leaving for work. He wasn't leaving us, Luke said. Hannah crossed the room and held him. No. I hated him. You were 10. I still hated him. He knew you loved him. Luke shook against her shoulder. Jonathan remained by the table, staring at the recorder. My sister called me the day before she disappeared, he said. I was preparing for an investor meeting. I told my assistant I would call her after the vote. His voice broke. I never did. Emma entered carrying her drawing. Why is everyone crying? Jonathan wiped his face, but he did not hide from her. Your mother told us the truth. Emma looked frightened. Are you going to send me away because Mama made trouble? Jonathan knelt before her. Your mother did not make trouble. She told the truth. I was the one who failed her. Emma glanced at Hannah. When Hannah nodded, the child stepped forward and let Jonathan hold her. It lasted only a few seconds, but it changed the room. Hannah watched Jonathan hold Emma with both hands, carefully, as though one wrong movement might break the last living piece of the sister he had lost forever. Eleanor then unfolded the blanket's red border. Caroline said she hid a second message here. The seam had been cut and poorly closed. Emma touched the damaged fabric. Mr. Marcus did that, she said. Mama was sleeping. He came to our room and opened the blanket. Jonathan pulled back. Marcus knew where you lived. Emma nodded. He said Mama could keep running, but the truth belonged to him. The adults stared at one another. The theft had not ended 7 years ago. Marcus had been watching Caroline until the final weeks of her life. By morning, Marcus knew Jonathan had heard Caroline's recording. He moved first. 2 police cars entered the estate just after breakfast. A detective asked to speak with Hannah about a pair of diamond earrings reported missing from a guest's room. Hannah almost laughed from disbelief. Then an officer opened her work locker and found the earrings inside her spare shoes. Luke swore under his breath. I did not put those there, Hannah said. Marcus entered with the careful concern of a man arriving to help. This is unfortunate, he told the detective. Mrs. Brooks has had financial difficulties. We recently learned she may also have encouraged the child to approach Jonathan. Hannah turned on him. You photographed my son. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. That is a serious accusation. He produced security footage showing Hannah entering Jonathan's private office the previous night. The timestamp was wrong, and the video ended before it showed Jonathan following her inside. Jonathan told the detective Hannah had permission to enter every room in the house. Marcus addressed him softly. You are emotionally involved. The board is already concerned. Board members warned Jonathan that the scandal could destroy Reedwell's value within hours. A family court representative arrived before noon. Until Emma's identity could be legally confirmed, she would be placed in temporary protective care. Eleanor's shelter was under review because a child had left without authorization. Jonathan had no custody rights yet. No, Emma said. She backed into the kitchen wall and gripped the lighthouse blanket. Jonathan called attorneys. Hannah called Eleanor. Luke stood by the door as if he could stop the entire system with his body. Nothing changed the order. Marcus found Hannah alone in the laundry room. He placed a document on the folding table. Sign this, and everything ends. The statement said Emma had been coached by shelter workers. It said Caroline's message was likely forged. It said Jonathan had pressured Hannah to support the story because of guilt over his sister's death. It also said Marcus had never threatened Hannah or Luke. In return? Hannah asked. The theft complaint disappears. Your rent is covered for 1 year. Luke receives a scholarship. Emma goes to a good foster family far from this scandal. You mean far from Jonathan? I mean safe. Hannah picked up the pen. She imagined the relief. No police. No eviction notice. Luke finishing school without wondering whether his mother would be arrested. Marcus watched confidently. Then Hannah remembered Emma under the table, asking for 1 minute of trust. She tore the statement in half. My son deserves a safe home, she said. But not one purchased with another child's fear. Marcus's confidence vanished. You think courage will pay your rent? No. But cowardice would teach my son the wrong price for it. Luke had been standing outside. After Marcus left, Luke entered. You always do this, he said. You save everyone except yourself. Luke. What happens if they arrest you? What happens to me? Hannah had no answer that could make him safe. I am your mother, she said. That is why I cannot show you that a lie becomes acceptable when the truth costs too much. Luke turned away. For several minutes, Hannah thought she had lost him. Then he returned carrying Ben's old Reedwell badge. I'm scared, he said. But I don't want you to sign. Hannah pulled him into her arms. Downstairs, the child services worker prepared to leave with Emma. Jonathan knelt in front of the girl. This is temporary. You said I wouldn't be sent away. I said I would protect you. You didn't. The words struck harder than anything Marcus had said. Jonathan lowered his head. You're right. I failed to stop this. But I am not finished. Luke gave Emma a worn stuffed dog he had kept since childhood. He helped me when I was scared, Luke said. You can borrow him. Emma took it with one hand while holding Hannah with the other. The worker separated them. Outside, Emma sat in the back of a gray car. She pressed her palm against the window. Hannah placed her own hand on the glass. As the car began moving, Emma pointed toward an upstairs window. Hannah followed her finger. A drawing lay on the bed in Emma's room. It showed a lighthouse, the blanket, and Ben's metal toolbox. Beneath the toolbox handle, Emma had colored a small red square. Hannah ran upstairs with Luke and Jonathan behind her. Did your father ever mark his tools in red? Jonathan asked. Luke stared at the drawing. He had 2 boxes, he said. One was in our garage. Hannah reached for her phone, but Luke stopped her. Marcus's people came this morning. They said they were collecting company property. They took everything from the garage. Hannah looked again at the red square. Where was the second toolbox? Luke's face changed. In my truck, he said. Under the rear storage panel. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, they saw Marcus walking toward Luke's parked truck. Luke reached the truck first. He locked the doors with the remote just as Marcus touched the handle. Marcus looked toward the mansion and saw Hannah, Jonathan, and Luke standing on the steps. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Jonathan's security chief approached from the side. He was one of the guards Hannah had chosen, a retired state trooper with no ties to Reedwell. Marcus smiled. I was checking whether the boy's vehicle had been damaged. Luke held up the keys. It's fine. Marcus walked away slowly. They waited until his car left the gates before opening the rear storage panel. The old toolbox was covered in dust. Its hinges were rusted, and one corner had been crushed. Luke placed it on the kitchen table. Dad let me paint this handle when I was little, he said. A faded red square remained beneath the grip. Hannah ran her fingers along it and felt a narrow ridge. The handle lifted away, revealing a false bottom. Inside were folded photocopies, an envelope, a photograph, and a small digital recorder wrapped in plastic. Jonathan examined the papers. They showed transfers from Reedwell accounts into vendors connected to Marcus. Several carried authorization codes assigned only to the chief financial officer. The photograph showed Marcus outside a bank with a man later convicted of financial fraud. Luke opened the envelope addressed to Hannah and Luke. Hannah read aloud. My love, if you find this, I failed to come home with the truth. Her voice stopped. Luke took the letter and continued. I could not tell you everything without placing you in danger. I know my silence has already hurt you. I am sorry. I am trying to bring a mother and her little girl home. I hope one day Luke understands that protecting your family sometimes means protecting someone else's too. Luke pressed the page to his mouth. I thought he left us nothing. He left us the truth, Hannah said. A forensic audio technician recovered part of the damaged recorder that afternoon. Ben's voice came first. You framed her. Then Marcus. You do not understand what exposure would do. Investors leave. Employees lose pensions. My father goes to prison. 2 families collapse because Caroline cannot keep quiet. The families are already collapsing. You take those pages to Jonathan, and your son grows up without a father. There was a sound of movement, then static. The threat was not a complete confession, but it proved Marcus knew about the records and had threatened Ben before his death. Jonathan stood at the window for a long time. His general counsel advised handling the evidence privately. Reedwell shares could fall. Lawsuits could follow. Thousands of jobs might be affected. Jonathan turned around. For 7 years, this company survived because 2 innocent people carried its shame. If the truth costs us money, then the company will finally pay its debt. He scheduled an emergency board hearing and contacted federal investigators. He released a public statement acknowledging that Caroline may have been falsely accused. Before the hearing, Jonathan visited Emma at the temporary foster home. He brought no gifts. He sat on the floor while she colored another lighthouse and told her they had found Ben's evidence. Does that mean I can come home? It means we can prove more of the truth. That isn't the same thing. No, Jonathan admitted. But I will not promise what I cannot control again. Emma studied him, then pushed a blue pencil across the carpet. You can color the water. Jonathan stayed for an hour, filling the page with uneven waves. When he left, Emma let him kiss the top of her head. Marcus attempted to transfer money and leave the state. Jonathan froze his company access before the transactions cleared. Still, Marcus agreed to attend the hearing. His attorney claimed the documents were copies, the recording was incomplete, and Hannah's family had manufactured a story for money. Eleanor arrived that evening holding a weathered envelope. Caroline mailed this before she died, she said. It was addressed personally to Jonathan, but it came back. Someone in Reedwell's executive office had redirected all private mail connected to her name. The envelope remained sealed. Caroline's handwriting crossed the front. Jonathan placed it in an evidence sleeve without opening it. The next morning, Hannah entered the boardroom wearing her only dark dress. Luke sat beside her. Eleanor held Emma's empty chair in her gaze. Marcus walked in last. He looked composed until he saw the envelope. His face lost its color. That letter was supposed to be destroyed, he whispered. No one spoke. Jonathan leaned forward. How did you know what was inside it? Marcus realized too late that every person in the room had heard him. Marcus's attorney rose first. My client is exhausted. His statement proves nothing. Marcus regained his composure. I meant any letter from Caroline. She had been threatening this family for years. Jonathan did not argue. He opened the evidence sleeve. Caroline's letter contained the original account authorization bearing Marcus's signature, a handwritten timeline of his threats, and a photograph of Caroline holding baby Emma in the lighthouse blanket. A final note was addressed to Jonathan. Protect Emma because she deserves safety, not because you need forgiveness. She cannot become the medicine for your guilt. Jonathan read the sentence twice before passing it to the investigators. Marcus attacked the evidence. He called Caroline unstable, Ben dishonest, and Hannah desperate. Then he looked at Hannah. How much did Jonathan promise you? Hannah stood. She did not describe her unpaid rent or defend the worn cuffs of her dress. You threatened my son. You planted jewelry in my locker. You tried to purchase my silence. None of those facts change because I am poor. The technician played the recovered audio. Ben's voice filled the boardroom. The families are already collapsing. Then Marcus's threat about Luke growing up without a father. Luke closed his eyes. Eleanor confirmed Caroline's identity, illness, and final recording. A document examiner confirmed the signatures. Banking specialists matched the authorization codes to Marcus's office. Finally, Emma entered with her child advocate. She carried Luke's stuffed dog beneath one arm and the lighthouse blanket beneath the other. Jonathan moved to stand, but stopped himself. This was not his moment to control. Emma pointed at Marcus. He came when Mama was sleeping. He cut the red part. Mama cried after he left. Marcus looked around the room and understood that the story he had controlled for 7 years no longer belonged to him. My father owed dangerous people, he said. I moved the money to save him. I intended to return it. He looked at Jonathan. Caroline would not listen. If she exposed it, the company could have collapsed. Employees would have lost everything. I saved this family from humiliation. Hannah answered quietly. No. You saved its name and destroyed its people. Federal investigators stepped forward. Marcus did not resist as they placed him under arrest. Before leaving, he looked at Jonathan as though expecting mercy. Jonathan's voice remained steady. Accountability is not cruelty, Marcus. It is the consequence you denied everyone else. When the doors closed, Jonathan addressed the board and the cameras outside. Marcus created the lie. But my pride gave it a home. Caroline asked me to believe her, and I chose documents over my sister. Ben Brooks risked his life to do what I should have done. He formally cleared both names and ordered an independent investigation into Ben's death. Jonathan then faced Luke. Your father came to me with the truth, and I made this company too frightening for honest people to reach me. I cannot give him back to you. Luke's eyes filled, but he held Jonathan's gaze. No. You can make sure the next person gets through the door. Jonathan removed Ben's badge from the evidence table and placed it in Luke's palm. The badge had once represented unanswered questions in the Brooks home. Now it carried weight. Hannah closed Luke's fingers around it. For the first time since Ben's death, neither of them looked ashamed when anyone spoke his name. The child advocate explained that Jonathan could seek temporary family placement while custody was reviewed. Jonathan knelt before Emma. What do you want? Emma looked at Hannah and Luke. I want to stay with you, she told Jonathan. But I want them too. Jonathan turned to Hannah. Hannah crouched beside the child. You will never have to hide under a table to keep your family again. Emma threw one arm around Jonathan while holding Hannah's hand with the other. Outside the boardroom, Jonathan returned the blanket to Emma. The torn red border had been repaired, but one damaged stitch remained visible. Why didn't they fix that part? Emma asked. Jonathan touched the crooked thread. Because your mother should not have to look perfect to be remembered with love. 6 months later, Jonathan's mansion no longer sounded empty. Emma's drawings covered one wall of his office. A pair of muddy sneakers waited beside the formal staircase. Luke's old stuffed dog sat proudly on Emma's bed, wearing a ribbon she had tied around its neck. The family court approved Jonathan as Emma's primary guardian, with Hannah named as an additional legal guardian at Emma's request. Hannah refused Jonathan's first offer of money. "I do not need to be rescued," she told him. "I need work that means something." Together, they created the Caroline Reed Family Safety Initiative. It provided emergency transportation, temporary housing, and legal help for mothers and children escaping dangerous homes. Hannah became its director. The same experience that once made wealthy guests overlook her now made frightened families trust her. She knew what it meant to count grocery money, fear an eviction notice, and enter a beautiful building certain that no one inside would hear you. Luke began studying electrical engineering at a technical college through a scholarship established in Ben's name. The investigation into Ben's death was reopened. Although some answers remained uncertain, his name was cleared, and his courage was placed in Reedwell's official history. Jonathan changed through smaller things. He left meetings on time for Emma's school events. He remembered Luke's examination dates. He learned how Hannah took her coffee and made it before difficult foundation meetings. He ate dinner at the kitchen table instead of alone in his study. Caroline's photograph stood beside Ben's letter. Emma still slept with the lighthouse blanket, but she no longer carried it into every room. She added a new patch near the repaired red border. It showed 4 figures holding hands: Emma, Jonathan, Hannah, and Luke. Beside them stood a smaller figure near a lighthouse. "That's Mama," Emma explained. "She found the way home first." One evening, after Emma fell asleep, Jonathan and Hannah sat at the kitchen table. "There is a school picnic Saturday," he said. "Would you come with us?" "I attend most foundation events." "Not as the director." Hannah looked at him. "As family," he said. There was no grand speech. No promise that grief would disappear. Jonathan simply placed his hand on the table between them. Hannah rested hers beside it. "You are learning to ask better questions," she said. A month later, a letter arrived from Marcus in federal custody. He apologized to Emma and asked for forgiveness. Jonathan wanted to throw it away, but Hannah stopped him. "Consequences and forgiveness are not opposites," she said. "But neither one belongs to us." They gave the sealed letter to Emma. She placed it inside a drawer. "Maybe I'll read it when I'm older," she said. "Forgiving him should be my choice too." Jonathan nodded. For once, he did not decide for her. At the Foundation's first public gathering, Hannah stood near the stage while families shared lunch beneath bright paper lanterns. Near the entrance stood a small, simple plaque bearing Caroline and Ben's names. Beneath them were 7 words Emma had chosen. They believed someone when belief was most dangerous. Emma suddenly disappeared. Jonathan looked toward the exits, panic rising in his face. Hannah pointed beneath a refreshment table. A little boy was hiding there, crying into his sleeve. Emma crawled beneath the cloth and offered him half of her cookie. "You can stay here 1 minute," she told him. "Then I'll show you the safe people." The boy accepted the cookie. Jonathan began to call security, then stopped when Hannah touched his arm. Together, they watched Emma lead the boy from beneath the table. At Jonathan Reed's dinner, the most powerful people in the room had spent the night looking across polished plates at one another. Hannah had been the only person willing to look underneath. That was where she found a frightened child. That was where Jonathan found the family he thought he had lost. And that was where all of them learned that dignity does not always enter through the front door. Sometimes it arrives cold, crying, and wrapped in an old blanket, waiting for one person brave enough to make room.